Welcome to Moonbeaming, a podcast about lunar living, magic, creativity, tarot, and more. I'm your host, Sarah Faith Gottesdiener, and I'm so honored and excited to be here with you today. Hello, and welcome back to Moonbeaming, a podcast. Of course, you know it's a podcast. You're listening, that explores the intersections between the magical and the mundane, the spiritual and the practical. And this is a space for the curious, compassionate, critical seeker. And if you're listening, hey, hello, that's you. Hi. I'm your host, Sarah Faith Gottesdiener. I'm an artist, author, psychic, graphic designer. I'm a business owner, a tarot reader, and yes, a podcast host. I'm also so incredibly honored and thrilled you're here. I know that your attention is valuable, and in Moonbeaming land, we try to bring you all thriller, no filler. So let's dive right into today's episode. Today's episode is so phenomenal. It's right on time with so much that I've been thinking about and working on since the beginning of this year, because I've been thinking about and researching and working on all things boundaries. As you know, my workshop series, Better Boundaries, starts next week. I'm so excited. And week 2, we get into the nervous system, different attachment styles, how to get into one's window of tolerance, how to begin reprogramming our own particular nervous systems. If you are highly sensitive or intuitive, that's super key because we're talking about boundaries, and boundaries inherently are about feeling safe. And if we don't feel safe in our bodies for a variety of reasons, it's going to be more challenging to advocate for our own safety and to prioritize our own safety, you know? Right? So if that's interesting to you, come join us. I cannot wait to begin. And I'm so stoked about today's guest. I got a chance to talk about the nervous system responses and boundaries with today's guest, Victoria Albina. We get into so much. We get into the stress cycle, how to regulate the nervous system. We talk about what feminism means to us now and how that overlaps with our own respective philosophies and what we do in the world. There's so much more as well. We totally nerd out. We totally come with all the jokes. You know, there's no one I would rather get into the nervous system with and stress cycles and subverting the patriarchy and trade corny yet hilarious jokes with than Victoria. I love Victoria, and I know you will too. Here is a little bit about her. Victoria Albina, she, they, is a certified life coach, UCSF trained family nurse practitioner, and breathwork meditation guide with a passion for helping women realize that they are their own best healers so they can break free from codependency, perfectionism, and people-pleasing and reclaim their joy. She is the host of the Feminist Wellness Podcast, holds a master's degree in public health from Boston University School of Public Health, and a BA in Latin American Studies from Oberlin College. Victoria has been working in health and wellness for over 20 years and lives on occupied Muncie Lenape territory in New York's Hudson Valley. We had a super rich, really fun conversation, which you will get to hear right now. Just a little note. We had some tech difficulties. Some of the interview did not get recorded. So if you sense that, thank you for your patience and understanding. We are all just doing our best while the machines have their own agenda. But you will definitely love this conversation. One frequently missing piece that I have observed in whether it be the spiritual industrial complex or the wellness industrial complex that feminism can help us with is this political framework where our wellness is inherently political because of our race, our class, our gender, our, if we're disabled or not, if we're trans, if we're queer, whatever these intersecting Venn diagrams of identity and class will absolutely influence how we connect with ourselves and connect with other people. And I think that for me, it's been, I cannot disconnect the political framework from my spirituality or from my so-called wellness. I think all of these terms also are very loaded because I think as we change and we grow and as some of these words get flattened or change or both, it can get kind of, I know that it can get a little bit murky. So that's why I wanted you to define it, because I also think a lot of times people think of feminism as pussy hats or bubble baths or wanting to be the same, to have the same kind of power as, straight white men or whatever that may be. And I think you're framing it in such a generative, expansive way that takes into account the entirety of a human being's spirit.
Well, thank you. I mean, that is my goal. And I appreciate, your, the importance that you just shared of a really intersectional framework, right? And an intersectional lens. And bringing up the social determinants of health and really naming that first and foremost, right? And talking about the complexity, everything. We know so much about, neonatal mortality has so much to do with maternal health. And I'm going to use gendered language because that's what's in the research, but maternal health at menarche, right? So whether your baby dies when you have it when you're 24 has to do with how much nutrition you have at 12. And girls are generally given less food than boys because obviously, right? So whether we're starting there or we're starting, at the destruction of Black Wall Streets across the country, and that where's the freeway put next to the Black neighborhood? What do we know about freeways and the off-gassing of diesel trucks and in communities with low vitamin C levels, right? Asthma, allergies, the allergic triad, eczema. What does that do to your capacity to work and focus in school when you're 12? It just right? It's endless examples. And so, yes, yoga now. Yes, breath work now. Yes, thought work now. Yes. And where are you standing? Where are you living? Whose land are you on? Right? Just that cognizance and that awareness and the perspective. And furthermore, right? Understand, and I'm not trying to get into the suffering Olympics at all because everyone loses in that, right?
100.
That's not a summer games that ends up with any gold medals for nobody. And the perspective of saying, yes, I am in struggle, but am I really in struggle? Because UPS is 3 days late bringing my new Dyson to the house, or right? Whose stolen land am I on?
Right.
Be upset about what you're upset about, process it through your body, do somatics, do thought work through it so you don't then snap at that UPS driver making minimum wage, working his third job of the day, right? But also with love and care and kindness and compassion. I was a friggin' hospice nurse. I'm a compassion machine.
You sure are.
Thank you. And perspective, babies. Perspective. What are you so upset about? Is that the hill upon which you may choose, in fact, to die today and to take everyone else down with you?
Oh my gosh, this makes me think of this great Rilke quote that I've been thinking about, and it's, may you be defeated by more and more difficult things. And I love that, because if we're just getting stuck on the UPS delivery being 3 days late, you know,
right.
I also think that this was a question I was going to ask you. So I want to just kind of pivot, because I think we're a little bit there, because I'm kind of also thinking about, well, the person who's, you know, blowing their top off at the driver, cutting them off in traffic, they might be burnt out.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I think that our bandwidths our already frayed bandwidths have really been influenced and impacted. And I wanted to hear your take on what you're seeing, whether it be in your private practice or with your groups, or, you know, listeners writing in, or whatever it may be, or you're just, you know, intuitive, collective feelers out there. In your humble opinion, you know, what are you kind of picking up on in the collective with in terms of burnout and bandwidth? And what are some ways that we can kind of get back to center so we can have a fuller cup to help other people?
Yeah. I mean, touching down on year 3 of the pandemic, like that's some shit right there, right? Plus maybe World War III, plus for those of us who think this way, right? But like also Palestine, also Yemen, also why are we not taking action there, right? So there's a lot of geopolitical
Also, why don't we have healthcare? Like socialized, you know, like also, why have we all not just been able to take a break? Like, I mean, we could be here all day, you know? Yes.
Yes, this is part 1 of a 7,000 part series called Sarah and I Talk About the World All Day, Every Day.
WTF.
Right? Exactly. Okay, so I would actually love to nerd and to help people understand something from neuroscience I use science as a way to bring in compassion, because when I was really sick in my physical body, I didn't know what the fuck was going on. And so I thought it was me. Like, I thought I was the problem. I thought I was depressed and anxious because there was something wrong with me. I had parasites. So, you know, you destroy the gut microbiome, you make the girl sad. That's science. So let's talk about window, right? I mean, let's talk about the window of capacity, shall we? Yeah. So and I love you use the example that I often use to explain the window of capacity. So if you're going to be a nerd, which I highly recommend, and look this up later, you're going to want to look up
10 out of 10.
Yeah, exactly. Always and forever. Look up the window of tolerance, because that's what it's called in the psychological literature. I work with folks who are looking to overcome codependency, perfectionism, people pleasing. If there's anything we know how to do to our own detriment, it's tolerate other people's bullshit, other people's lies, people crossing our boundaries, right? And disrespecting and not caring for ourselves. So I don't like that word. I'm not trying to teach tolerating. So I talk out the window of capacity, or a term from my teacher, Jane Clapp, the window of bodily dignity. So isn't that so beautiful? And so this is the framework for understanding how many inputs can your nervous system tolerate and stay chill. Stay in what's called ventral vagus, which is the safe and social part of the autonomic nervous system, part of our parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest part. All you need to remember is the chill part, ventral vagus. So let's say you're driving on I-95, which is generally a terrible idea, but you're doing it. And one jerk cuts you off. And you're like, oh, jerk. but you're listening to a nice show. You're listening to this podcast. You're loving it. You're fine. You're focused. Your nervous system is cool. You're chill. And then another jerk cuts you off and you're like, yo, what is going on? But you're fine. You breathe through it. And then the third and then the fourth. And you're like fucking screaming. You're laying on the horn. You're opening the window to give them the good Italian hand. You're like going full New York on this Bostonian who cut you off.
It's always a Bostonian.
It's always a friggin' masshole. And I'm from the great state of Rhode Island, but now I'm bragging.
So, I'm from Connecticut. We know all about you Massachusetts people.
We know you. We see you massholes. Get off I-95. Stay where you're going. Stay where you're at. So, yeah, you lose your shit. You start screaming. And that is your nervous system not having the capacity to keep you chemically in that window, in ventral vagal. So this is a biological occurrence. It happens in approximately 0.6 seconds, so that you go whoosh into sympathetic fight or flight, flooded with adrenaline, norepinephrine, cortisol. God damn you, Bostonian. Or it's been happening all day. It's been happening your whole life, right? We can go back to intersectional feminism, right? Microaggressions, macroaggressions, destruction of your communities, right? Living in a Black body, a brown body, a queer body, a differently abled body, et cetera, neurodivergent body in this culture. And you collapse. Your nervous system is like, I'm not having it, but there is no fight left in this animal. I've broken all my nails on this. There's no tooth, there's no fang. Your girl's tired. Your animal is tired. And so that in relationship sounds like, right? Sympathetic is your foot's on the gas. And dorsal, the collapse, is foot's on the brake. That's, I don't know. I don't want to hang out. Thank you. No, you go to the party without me. Dinner, I'm not hungry. Or you're like all the carbs, but in bed.
Yeah.
I'm burnt out. I'm done. I am just. And again, I think when we can see this and understand it within the framework of 0.6 seconds, we can remember it's not you. There's not a problem with you. You're not broken. You don't need fixing because you're just basta. You're just done. In Spanish, very much in Argentine, we say no doy más. Like I can give no more. There's nothing to give in this animal, in this nervous system. The chemicals are washed out, right? I can't get activated and I can't get chill. So from there, we get to do the work of coming home to ourselves somatically, of building trust with ourselves slowly, gently, and coming into embodiment in ways that feel safe to the mammal, right? With that constant focus on. So sorry, I'll back up. I didn't define somatics. So soma means body in Greek, and somatics, as the modern understanding, is credited to Thomas Hanna, who in 1976 published a book naming this new term somatics. We can very easily say that this is the work of, which is millennia back. This is the work of communities of color that come together to dance, to move, to be present in their physiology. The Celts, as well, had dancing ceremonies. So this is ancient work, but, let's put a white guy on it. So anyway, not that I have any beef with Thomas Hanna. His work is dope.
Lovely guy. Makes beef a great casserole. Yeah, exactly.
He does make a lovely casserole. Have you had the one with the chips on top?
I haven't. Nice. I'll have to ask him about it. Next time
I'll have him fax you some.
Yeah, next time I'm in dorsal.
The crunch is nice for dorsal.
It would be so nice if we just, I've been thinking about, sorry to interrupt you, Victoria.
No, I've been
thinking about how the best compliments moving forward could be you're just one of my favorite people to co-regulate with. I just, you just really put my nervous system at ease. I hope we can become so nervous system literate that we can start thinking of who feels safe and who is maybe a little bit of a test of our boundaries and where our energetic fields end to begin. So anyway, I'll just
wait. So what if I just had a great idea? What if we change Valentine's Day to ventral vagal day? And it was a celebration of the people who bring you into ventrovagal, right? Who co-regulate.
We did it. We just branded a new global holiday. It's happening here first. You heard it here first.
I love this.
I love it too. And let's keep going. So you're talking about somatics.
Yeah, I love somatics. Well, so your question was how, we're in thinking about burnout, secondary to our own personal experiences, this global experience, of course, in the framework of, for some bodies, thousands of years of oppression, right? So what do we do? How do we start to bring ourselves back? Yeah. So for me, the process is this: awareness, acceptance, and then action. It is very much the way of a dysregulated nervous system to jump to action. It is very much I will just say broadly, the American way, right? To see a problem, right? Like if you got a problem, I'll solve it without, right?
I could finish not going to check out the
sure you're not going?
Well, my DJ
revolves it. Thank you. Excellent. I think we are, we're showing our age in the best way.
Unfortunately. Fortunately. Yeah.
Fortunately. Yeah. I mean, none of the ridiculous things that I did in high school or college are on video anywhere. They're not on the internet.
I was just thinking about, like, thank God I didn't grow up, on the internet, because no good.
No good. Yeah. There might be like some negatives, like some film stills somewhere, but probably not. Everyone's moved so many times.
100. Yeah. Right? They're in a box somewhere in someone's basement, and it's
someone's mom's attic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good.
So good.
So we have awareness,
acceptance, and then action. Because when we jump to action, that's like New Year's resolutions, right? It's like, all year I haven't done anything of this list of 27,000 things that's good for me, but tomorrow is the day. Tomorrow I change my life. And it's like, how can that not fail? Right. And so for me, the core work of somatics, of this embodiment work, is building self-trust, because it's only when our nervous system trusts us and we trust our nervous system that we can expand that window of capacity or bodily dignity. Right. So that the fourth thing, you're like, all right, Mittens, I've got my own back. I know how to do what to do, and I got it. I can stay in ventrovagal with me. Right. Or I can look outside of me in a loving way for someone to co-regulate with me. Right. So it's all about that self-trust. So when you set yourself up with these like ridiculous goals, like, what are you going to do but fail? Like, come on now. So that is antithetical to the work of bringing in more self-trust. So
I see a lot of folks kind of holding fast to levels of quote unquote productivity that they had maybe, 3 years ago, not understanding how much stress impacts executive functioning and the nervous system. And I also see almost the opposite. I work for myself, and we do have interactions with people, whether it be brands or corporations, people working in corporate or just different work zones. That's not how we run our studio, but I also see almost a heightened urgency. And I gotta always sort of lovingly shake my head and ask myself, like, are you in your body? Like, are you, because you're asking, like someone, for example, like an email at 9 a.m. and then like a follow-up at 5 a.m. and it's not very important, like no offense to the person. I know it's important for them and their job and their boss, but like, it's not, I mean, you were a nurse. I'm married to one. I'm always like, well, you're winning because this person's, this person's coding and I'm getting an email. It's like a little bit different here. Right. But so so the listeners know, that's always my bar is like, is someone coding? Meaning is someone on the edge of life and death?
Right.
And
I say blood or flood. If there's not blood or a flood.
Yeah, like it's an email. It's a PDF, baby. Yeah, like, I'll click the DocuSign tomorrow. Like,
it'll be fine.
But anyway, sorry, that's neither here nor there. But, and so I'm just kind of, what I really hope folks listening can know, I'm speaking like directly to them and myself, of course, is like, it's okay to be where you are. It's okay to not be, in quote, functioning at, in quote, the same level you were 3 years ago. Your nervous system is different. Your belief system is probably different. You're working a lot of stuff out on the subconscious level, and on the physical level, processing and emotions take so much energy. I think that what Victoria is sharing here is so useful to be able to know, okay, well, am I in hyper? Am I in hypo, or am I in my window of capacity? And if you're in hypo and you're, you know, on the couch with your carbs, and you just have no motivation, and you like, we will tend to turn the knives inward. Like, one symptom of the patriarchy is blaming ourselves for a systemic societal issue that's larger than us. And what Victoria's sharing here is really key, because we have to know where we are from a somatic perspective, from a nervous system perspective. We have to be aware.
Right.
So now let's get to accept.
Yes. Yeah. One little note on the couch and the carbs, the reason to add on to why it's so vital to be able to scan yourself and to say, am I in dorsal? Like, am I having that physiologic experience of dorsal, or am I actually in ventral vagal and I'm buffering, right? Yeah. I don't want to see it. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to do the whatever, you know, the homework is of life. I don't want to think about that fight with my partner or my mom or whatever. So I'm going to zone out unconsciously, unintentionally from habit. And when you can feel the difference, then you can make an informed decision. You can have informed choice, right? Because if it's dorsal, you may want to give yourself that little break, set a timer, hang out with it, let it be, snuggle in harder, and stop judging it. Because if not, you're not going to heal from and with it, right? You're just going to have more reasons from self-flagellation to stay in dorsal. Right. But giving yourself an hour or two or whatever to be with it, a month, a pandemic, to be with it, versus like, no, you know what? I actually feel pretty chill in my body and I just don't want to look at this. So now I get to make a choice. Like, let me go do some thought work. Let me do a somatic practice that involves movement and helping me to feel really embodied. Let me have a conversation with my inner children's, right? Like, let me do that actual work. Or call a friend and talk it out. You know, like, English is my second language. I get stuck sometimes and I try to work things out on my own. I'm an auditory processor, right? So can you use the phone a friend option, co-regulate and process. So yeah, so really important for me in knowing, when is it time to do thought work? When is it time to do that next thing? Or when is it, when is Leslie Knope a really great idea? I mean, the answer is always, but you know what I mean. Yeah.
And then that leads into action. Yeah.
Awareness, acceptance, action. So often what happens with my clients, I see this all day long, and I do it too. I mean, I'm a human, right? Is you recognize the thought pattern, the thought habit, the behavioral pattern, the somatic pattern that you don't like. And you get very mad at it because it's been ruining your life and you're so grumpy, and how could you do that? And you should know better. And you're a coach or an NP or a teacher or a yoga teacher. You know, like, you're someone who should know better. And so you're so mad at your brain for telling you this old story, right? This tale as old as time. And so you're mad at it. So you try to change it from being so mad about it, so mad at it, so it doesn't like it. And what's going to happen? You're insympathetic against yourself. Important note, the human organism, and you made reference to this, functions optimally from ventral vagus. When you're jacked up on adrenaline, norepinephrine, cortisol, everything that runs from the crown of the head, crown chakra, if you will, to the root chakra, everything from the top of the animal to the bottom of the animal, doesn't work right. So too in dorsal, it does not work optimally. It doesn't work the way we want it to. It works perfectly, right? In that, let's talk digestion. If you, Sarah, were being chased by a lion, would you stop to digest the cheeseburger you had for lunch?
I would not be pooping.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so pleased to hear more about your survivability. You would do well in a zombie apocalypse, right? When the apocalypse is nigh, when the marauders come down to destroy the village, please don't digest, don't do geometry, don't turn T3 thyroid hormone into T4 active thyroid hormone. Please don't create a healthy endometrium to shed in a period every 28 days. Please don't release a follicle. Don't ovulate.
We've got our eye on the horizon and a clenched butthole, and we're just moving forward.
Bucket, run, fight, flight, right? Or collapse. When you're in dorsal, you don't do any of that other stuff either, because again, you're pushing your back against the door of the cave, dorsal, to try to keep the monsters at bay. And then your one and only job is to feign death, to look real dead. So the monsters don't eat you, because there's not a monster out there that's like, well, carrion birds, but we'll move on.
I know, like,
dead prey,
there's
right?
always nuance, complexity.
The nuance. I just want a simple example.
I know.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I don't want to be rude to the condor, right? My national bird. I have so much love. This is a safer space for
Hey, don't call it a comeback.
Avians.
Those condors, man. Like, goddess bless those condors.
Have you ever seen one in real life?
They're so cool.
Yeah, they're also ugly as sin. I mean, it's shocking. It's shocking.
They've got really good hearts. They've got really good personalities.
Yeah, they are. They're really funny. Have you ever seen a stand-up show with a bunch of condors? They're hilarious. It's the best.
Yeah.
And they're enormous. I was back home in Argentina for a couple months last year, largely up in the Andes, and they're like everywhere hanging out. They're just walking on the side of the road. Like, I've got a, 9-foot wingspan. What's up with you? And I'm like,
the side of the road?
Yeah. Like up near Aconcagua, like up like in the Andes. They're just like snacking. They're like, oh, it's a mouse. It's for me.
Wow.
Yeah. They're badass. Yeah.
I'm glad we had this moment to
honor
the condor.
Honor the condor.
And
should we come back?
As you were saying, great. With the digestion, is if you're running away, and so what does that get? What information does that give us? Here, we're not running away. There was an email or two. There's an annoying comment on social media. We need to call back. We have to have an annoying conversation with someone, and we've been putting it off. Like, let's talk about that.
Right. So, yeah, when I think about somatics, it really is about getting into everyday presence with yourself. So what's happening in your belly when you're opening your email? What's happening in your breath when you are sitting down to write that report, right? Are you getting a headache every Thursday at 2 when you have the meeting with that kind of lurchy, kind of sketchy kind of colleague on Zoom, right? Like, what is the information your body is telling you about your nervous system state? And so in that awareness and then acceptance, like, this is what's happening. It's got programmed this way, ages 0 to 7, again, overlap with the chakras on the nervous system. And we can just accept that that's what has been until this moment when you heard this information on this show, possibly for the first time. And you're like, oh, wait. It's not my fault. I didn't cause it. I didn't make it this way. And I can begin to change it by accepting what is. And we went into the whole digestion condor because I was asking if you're judging yourself, right? You're creating that same chemical overlay into your body as the lions are coming. Mm-hmm. And in neither situation would you digest. Would you think properly? Would you be an animal doing mammalian activities within the organs?
And that's where I feel like witchcraft and boundary work comes in so well, because one of the first things you learn in the craft is how to ground and how to shield. Yes. And people use different terminology, but we're talking about centering in the body.
Yep.
We're talking about co-regulating with the earth or whatever
Plants,
element. Yeah. 100, anything you have an affinity towards. And then we're talking about creating a bubble of energy around you so that you do not become enmeshed. We want to be interdependent, not codependent. And we want to be in relationship with, but not enmeshed, right? We don't want to be absorbing. We don't want to be matching energy. A lot of my clients tend to be they attend to subconscious or unconsciously emotionally or energetically process the emotions or energy of others because that was like their role, and then they wonder why they're always exhausted. They're like eating for two, they're like processing for two. So you can really utilize energy work as well. And one thing, as you were talking, Victoria, I was thinking of a practice that I do, which is I will do things that are very low stakes, but have to, that they both retrain my neural pathways as well as retrain my somatic nervous system responses. And so currently I'm boxing. And so just today, this morning, I was boxing with my trainer, and it teaches me about my energy, which is incredible. It really, speaking of scans, it allows me to see where in my like energetic field I kind of move around like a noodle. But it also, I can tell my cycle, my stress cycle, the fight, flight, freeze. And I said to my trainer, because my trainer kept saying like, you need to come in, like to hit him. And I was like, you know what it is? It's that I was socialized female. And a lot of times people who are socialized feminine are not taught to fight. They're taught to retreat or to freeze, appease, or to fawn.
To fawn and appease.
And I realized I was going against my ingrained nervous system response, and he was like, you need to attack me. He's wearing the full thing. And I'm like, it's like, I'm going against my nervous system is like, no, get out of here. Like, or be like, oh, you look so nice in your boxing gloves or whatever. So I really recommend for folks who are trying to kind of unravel and trying to get to know their body to do a daily practice, yes, of course, which can be easily be done with grounding, with meditation, and also to do something physical in their comfort zone, which is relatively low stakes, which will allow you to scan your body, allow you to kind of see the connections between the nervous system, the neural pathways, and to rearrange some of those.
Because remember that in nervous system work, we always say story follows state, right? So the narrative that you are telling about your life is based on what state your nervous system is in that moment, which makes sense. If you're ventral vagal, the story is like, yeah, things are chill. Why? What? And you get a little jacked on adrenaline. You're like, things are not chill. In dorsal, you're like, what things? I don't even know what things are anymore, right? Like I forgot about things. I love that example of grounding through boxing, and of course, grounding through witchcraft. I mean, always and forever. Yes, yes, yes. One of the really simple things I love to have folks do is to get in touch with embodied decision-making, because from codependency, right, which is the wound of not enoughness, the wound of believing that you need to source your worth, your validation, your okayness from everyone in the universe instead of from yourself, which leads to perfectionism and people pleasing, the appeasing and fawning we were talking about. We forget how to make decisions for ourselves only, right? We crowdsource it. We get everyone else's opinion. We think like, what would my dad or my mom or my, attachment figure want me to do? What would be the most societally acceptable thing? We may not ask it in those ways, right? We may not hear that, but in our subconscious, we're running it through all those filters of the patriarchy, misogyny, and our codependent family blueprint. My clients often come to me not knowing whether they want coffee or tea in the morning. They reach for whatever they reach for because it's what they've always reached for, but they're not consciously pausing to ask themselves, mind, body, or spirit, what do I want? So then when it's time to ask, like, is this relationship serving me? They're like, fucked if I know. How could I know that? I mean, I'm miserable most of the time, but I also really do love them. So maybe I should continue tolerating this? I don't know. Right? So a small daily embodiment practice. In the morning, when you wake up, scan your body for feelings. What do I feel this morning? Scan your body for sensations. What's present, right? And so we need to I want to always say there, don't only go there. Don't only go inward, right?
Yeah.
We have, so in the wellness world, folks can get sort of obsessed with like navel gazing, interoception, and we need interoception, particularly, you know, I was talking before about folks who haven't individuated. We need to create a sense of being an individual in the world so we know who we are, so we can be in the collective. So too much interoception leads to depression. It leads to anxiety. It leads to overthinking and being overwrought and self-absorbed. You know, it is not healthy. So we need intero and exteroception. We need to be present to the world outside as a literal place, right? And from there in activism, if that's your jam, but in community, in collective, in connection with others. Codependency is a relational issue. And so we heal it in relation to self and relation to others. That pendulation, self world is vital.
And so I wanted to talk about boundaries and perfectionism, people pleasing, codependence. And I just want to start with, in your humble opinion, what are some misconceptions that folks have about boundaries and all of this?
They think they're mean. They think that setting a boundary is mean. How could I tell someone that I'm not available to talk with them? Like, what if they're upset? Right? What if they're hurt? What if they need something? Right? That it's really unkind, that it's selfish to set a boundary, right? That it means something, bad about you.
Especially if we're talking about, I just want to like weave feminism back in here.
Yes.
Especially if we're talking about all these stereotypes that we see. We'll be seen as bitches, we'll be seen as unlovable, we'll be seen as unattractive, not useful. Right. We see these archetypes everywhere, right? Like people make fun of powerful women who know what they want and they need, particularly if they're not young or attractive or, you know, Western beauty standards. We like, I think about like The Devil Wears Prada or you know, just
Hillary.
I was going to say public political figure because I didn't want to get too,
all right,
but, you know, like, but I mean, hello. And just like even witches in pop culture, the original kind of archetype of someone who is empowered and intuitive, we could be here all day. So what are some of the kind of unraveling, detaching from, or like repatterning around you had to do with societal conditioning so your belly could feel better, so you could feel more empowered, so you could make choices in your own life?
So I mean, it really was that interplay of thought work and breath work, breath work, and somatic practices of starting to see where the tightening it was in my body, right? Where I would brace against someone else's opinion, right? Because it's when we talk about, so in the somatics world, you know, people have probably seen this on Instagram, like the issues in the tissues, right? We hold our feelings in our bodies, and it's not like, you know, there's anger in your belly button or there's sad in your shoulder. It's about tension patterns, and it's about how we hold ourselves, right? The way we brace against the world, our posture, the way we actually move our bodies freely or in a constricted way, right? And so for me, it was starting to feel into what was happening in my body as an animal in different moments. right? When I felt I wanted to say no, when I felt I wanted to say, no, yes, me. Like I'm going next. Or, hey, sorry, there's a line here, right? Like those little things,
How
right?
many times
Right?
has someone listening here just let the
Just let
person
them cut.
walk in front of them
Yep.
or whatever, because
Yeah.
they don't want to start a conflict. They don't want to be seen
Well,
as
yeah, I don't
a,
want to
you know
be,
what?
yeah. Yeah, I don't want to be a
It's not a big
bother. No,
deal.
it's
It's
fine.
okay. You
It's totally
go.
fine. Right?
Right.
Yeah. Right. And this, I'll come back, but this is, when we were talking at the top of the show about perspective, right? And individuation work. So the work I coach the folks in my program to do is to see why those little moments matter so much, so that you can trust yourself to speak up, to have your own back somatically and physically, to say what needs said, so that the next time you don't care enough to even react.
And then there's the spiritual component. Can I bring in?
Please.
I have like two more things to say. And then, because this is such a rich conversation. I want to be respectful of your time. So I want to, but I do want to, I know it's like, we're both like, so just jam. This is like both our jam so hardcore, you can tell. So like selfishly, I just want us to telepathically just vibe for a minute, but I know we have to keep talking because there are people listening. So the spiritual thing, I think, to think about too, as you were saying, when we're so introspective, that can kind of intersect with depression or with anxiety. And I know this, I know that you know this, and I know this, and I just want to say it for the listeners. We also know that depression can be chemical. We know that it's not, we're not saying that if you're
my parasites,
depressed, you're selfish. It can be any level of things. I just want to be really clear. I don't want anyone to think but I understand everything you're saying. So it's not about us. That person who's cutting you in line is on their own trip. They're on their own patterns. Their own unconscious levels, their own entitlement, their own socialization. They're not thinking about you, boo. Like they're just like, oh yeah, I want a bagel. Oh, I don't, or oh, I always cut in line. Or so, and I think that what sensitives, a lot of people I am in conversation with and in community with, and who I facilitate learnings with, they're very highly sensitive. They're very intuitive. Which means that they're neurodivergent, which means they're processing things differently. There's also an overlap as well with trauma and with hypervigilance of like, and then when energy steps into all of this, meaning you're picking up on people's energies, you're absorbing the entitlement of that person wanting the bagel in the line who's not thinking about you at all. It can become confusing. It can become a bit of a knot. And I think that there's all of these different levels and layers. And I'm not saying any of this to overwhelm anyone, because sometimes healing happens much more quickly than you think it does. And I love, Victoria, that you brought up those little moments, because if we can transform those little moments, those little moments really add up.
Hugely. Yeah, because that's the nervous system, right? Back to the window of capacity. You've got another centimeter on each side, right? And that adds up for sure, right? Yeah, I love that reminder. One of the core things that happens from the codependent wound is this feeling so out of control in life, because you don't trust your own worth. And so the story the brain has so much facility to put together is, I am safest when I am controlling the whole world, right? When I am managing, when I am the puppeteer, when I am Geppetto and everyone is under my control. And we do this in such subtle, manipulative ways from the subconscious, right? Like if you're feeling attacked, breathe, baby, right? Like I am calling out habitual, common survival skill patterns. I'm not saying like there's something wrong with you, boo. not at all. Cause like I've done all of those things, right?
That's been major. I mean, that's my whole control freak. Hello. Like it's totally as a trauma response. Completely.
And did you know you were being manipulative? I didn't. No. And once I did, I was like, oh shit. Okay. I need to find another modality here, right?
It's also a mirror, right? Because it's like, if I don't think other people are trustworthy, then how can I possibly trust myself? And so we start with what is being shown to us over and over, like, having trust issues. Wonder what the universe is trying. Wonder what my reticular activating system is trying to let me know about maybe what I should deal with. And we can do it just as easily as that. Okay, I'm working with trust. I'm working with surrender. I'm working with letting go. I'm working with forgiving myself.
Right. And so that brings me back to, you're talking about that knot of like, I don't know what to do here. Right? Like, I don't know what's me, what's them, what's what, like, And so I think that's where we come back to intuition, the quiet, calm voice of the window of bodily dignity. So for me, when I overlap the window of bodily dignity and intuition, and I say those with the same prosodic voice because that calms the nervous system, into my own animal, into my physiology, there is no confusion about what is my intuition and what is anxiety, hyperaction, right? Hypervigilance, sympathetic, and what is collapse, what is dorsal, what is hypo, foot on the brake. There's never confusion because one is urgent, one is turned off, one is dissociated and not even present, and the either is frenetic and yelling. So as we overlap those two conceptually and then somatically, right? When are you calm and chill? Whose presence are you in? And the who can be the ghost of Maya Angelou. It can be a plant. It can be your dead grandma. It can be your partner or your best friend or a baby or a cat. Mother Earth herself, Pachamama. In whose presence are you most calm and grounded? What does that feel like in the physiology? What's the story? And this is where your intuition lies. And from getting to know your intuition, your discernment opens up, right? And you're able to discern, to tell, to know what the what is from animal. And the animal is never where conditioning, socialization, the patriarchy, misogyny, ableism, etc. lives. That's all up here in the kepi. That's in the brain, in the limbic system, that old amygdala in the prefrontal cortex. The brain is the site of all the storytelling, and the body knows the truth. So when you're in that bind, come back to the animal, back to the animal, back to the animal. Important caveat, because we honor the impact of trauma on animals. For those of us with a PTSD, CPTSD diagnosis, for those of us particularly for whom the site of trauma was our physical body, going in is not a safe choice. And I want to really, you do not need my permission. And yet I'd like to say, don't go there, baby. Don't go there. Don't listen to a podcast and think there's something wrong with me if I'm not embodied. I have to be embodied. I have to feel it to heal it. Fuck that. That is violence, right? That is more violence. You cannot heal hurt with more hurt. And for telling someone they have to go in when they don't have the window of capacity to support that, not about it.
Thank you so. Yes.
Always.
We want to have baby steps. I always like
kitten steps, smaller than baby. Meow, meow, meow.
Yeah. Little condor baby steps.
Yeah, it's so tiny.
I always liken working in a trauma-informed way as instead of jumping in cannonball style, you wade in. It might take you all day.
Sure.
But you're kind of wading into the water at the level that feels okay for you. And I have had many times in my life where I've waded in.
Yep.
You know what? The water feels a little too cold.
It's a little chilly. Let's get out.
I'm going to get back out.
Now I want my towel. Let's get cozy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I want to. So yes, this has been such an amazing conversation. I could talk to you for a million years, but we've gotta I just know that there are so many gems that people are going to really be working with and thinking about for days to come. So if folks want to work with you, if folks want to find you, Victoria, how can they do that?
Yeah. So my podcast is called Feminist Wellness. It's free every Thursday on all of the things. You can follow me on Instagram at Victoria Albina Wellness, and my website is victoriaalbina.com. You can go there for two delightful things. One, at the top of the page, there's a little teal bar. You can click there and get a suite of free meditations, including an orienting exercise, which is a nervous system tool. If when we were saying, don't go in, if that's not safe, what you want to do instead is orienting. So that's a tool available for you for free right at the top of victoriaalbina.com. If you are interested in learning more about working with me, victoriaalbina.com/anchored is how you can learn about my 6-month program and join us for the next cohort. It would be a delight to have you as we work through these issues using breathwork, thought work, and somatics.
Yay. Thank you.
Yay. Thank you.
Okay, everyone, that was our episode for today. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Please follow Victoria, listen to their podcast, the Feminist Wellness Podcast. It is also linked in the show notes, and send them a note or kind review to let them know you enjoyed our conversation here today. And if y'all are looking to sign up for Better Boundaries, enrollment ends tomorrow. Will I ever present it again? I don't know. I really do not know. If you've been feeling a yes, now's your chance. All the gatherings are recorded. Everything's recorded. So you'll get all the replays. It is all yours to keep forever, along with all the supplemental materials. A lot of times we will get feedback that folks will start the courses months later when they have the bandwidth for them at their own pace, which for people who need more time, for folks who are different style learners, it works super well because you can engage with the material and then integrate it at your own pace. Maybe 1 week's offerings might take you 3 weeks to get through and think about and integrate into your life. And that's amazing. That's fine. You know, it all takes the time it takes. There's no such thing as a immediate transformation. It doesn't happen that way. So I love to give everyone all of the material that you can keep and save forever and fit it into your busy schedule, because I know you're busy. All right, my dears, that's what I've got. Until soon, be good to yourself. Bye for now. Moon Beaming is brought to you by the Moon Studio. It is created and hosted by me, Sarah Faith Gottesdiener. It is edited by Rose Blakelock, with a lot of additional help from Hazel Frew. It is supported by our beautiful patrons, which you can join over at patreon.com, The Moon Studio. If you would like to further support the podcast, you can sign up for a sponsorship. You can rate and review it or share it with your friends or on your social media. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you so much.